Could you prove the devil's existence without the Bible? I remember listening to an atheist once saying that he would prefer the Greek pantheon, the Greek group of gods,
yeah,
as opposed to the one in the Bible, because the Greek ones are both good and bad. They get jealous and stuff.
Okay.
So they don't claim to be all good.
Okay.
And so he said the problem he has with the God in the Bible is that he claims to be all good. But the storyline he sees in the Bible doesn't quite live up to the claim.
Actually, I've heard some narrations say, no, the devil is not a bad guy.
Yeah.
The devil just wanted freedom.
Yeah.
And he was chucked out of his own home, the home where he had grown up in. And he was chucked out. So he's the good guy. So let's support him.
So the question is really, does Christianity's belief in a devil insult God?
Welcome to the TruthTok podcast, where we uncover the hidden truths and untold stories. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and guest, and they aim to bring light to the unspoken realities of life. The content shared here is for informational purposes only, and it is not intended to replace professional advice. Listener discretion is advised. Now, to the podcast.
Hello, welcome to TruthTok podcast. My name is Jason, the soulful nerd, and I'm here with
Maqawe.
Okay, with Maqawe, without his epitaph.
I know you're here with Maqawe. Today I'm here just to do it.
Yeah. Just do it.
Yeah.
So today we're talking about ludicrous notions and the scandal of the diabolical.
Ludicrous notions.
Yeah.
Can you please just break down the words?
Ludicrous.
Yeah.
Just means you're crazy. It's ludicrous. It's crazy.
Ludicrous.
Yeah.
Okay. So I
sounds like
at
a
first it
musician.
sounds like ludicrous.
Sounds like a musician, you know. And then diabolical just means devilish.
Devilish.
Diabolos.
Yeah.
Devilish.
Diabolos. Yeah.
So ludicrous notions and the scandal of the diabolical.
Okay.
I took my time thinking that one.
Yeah. You love big words.
No, not big words. I just like crazy words.
Okay.
I like saying things that sound crazy at first, but make sense later on.
Okay.
I speak in time bombs. I like to throw it and it looks innocuous, and then later on, boom!
Speak in tongues.
Yeah.
Time bombs or one
Time bombs. Time bombs. So the first time bomb is a question.
Okay.
Could you prove the devil's existence without the Bible?
Why do you want me to do it?
Why not?
Okay. Could I prove
Yeah.
the devil's existence without the Bible? Okay. So you cannot prove the existence of a being called Satan without the Bible.
Okay.
But you can prove the concept of evil without the Bible.
Okay.
Right? Because we live in a world where actually, you know, we once mentioned on this podcast that from the genesis of time anyway, there have been other religions that have their own creation stories, for example, right? So there is a concept that's called the dual mythology concept in religion, whereby they always explain the existence of good and evil, right? So like I said, that you can explain the concept of evil outside of the Bible, but maybe you might not explain the existence of a being called the devil. Because, for example, you look at the Chinese, they say there is a yin and a yang, good and right. You look at Egyptian mythology, they have what they call the god. What do they call him? Osiris and Seth.
Yeah.
And many other religions, they always have this existence of a good and an evil. There's an evil entity and a good entity always. So if we look around us in terms when it comes to mythology, you may be able to prove that there is an existence of evil. Even besides going to mythology, even if you look at life itself, it shows you that there is good and bad. Without us pinpointing who's responsible for good, who's responsible for evil, but there is always good and evil. existing side by side.
Yeah, and they exist continuously. But
yeah.
also even the deities
Yeah.
are not necessarily good or necessarily evil. They're a mixture of both.
Oh yeah.
I remember listening to an atheist once saying that he would prefer the Greek pantheon, the Greek group of gods,
yeah,
as opposed to the one in the Bible, because the Greek ones are both good and bad. They're not they even get jealous and stuff.
Okay.
So they don't claim to be all good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so he said the problem he has with the God in the Bible is that he claims to be all good. But the storyline he sees in the Bible doesn't quite live up to to the claim.
And so with the Greek mythology or whatever, pantheism, does it justify why they have many gods? Like they have multiple gods?
Yeah.
So is that the reason why they have multiple gods?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay. I thought you've read quite a lot on that, because I'm questioning myself. Why would they want a multiple set of gods? We have the god of thunder, Thor, the god of thunder.
Yeah, well, they also don't claim to be all powerful.
Okay.
Because I read of a creation myth that was very similar to the one we find in Genesis, the creation story.
Okay.
An origin story. And it said it was found in Egypt. And the waters, the God who calls for something to be created is not the one who creates something. So he can call for something.
Oh, okay.
And then another one has to
create. So that this God is not
it's a power sharing agreement. Yeah, he's not
potent.
He's not omnipotent.
He's not all powerful in one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now you come with the Bible, you have this omnipotent God.
Yeah.
He creates, he calls for something. He's the one who makes it happen. He's the one who carries out quality assurance. And he looked and it was good.
And he looked and looked until he says it was very good.
Yeah, it was very good.
Yeah.
So he calls for something, he creates it, and he's able to evaluate it as well.
Yeah.
And it turns out what he called for is exactly what he got.
Okay.
Not really so for the other origin stories.
Yeah. So the other origin stories, they do not have a being called the devil.
And they may have a naughty-ish god or whatever, but
so it's more like one of the gods rebelling.
Yeah.
And then taking the side of evil.
And also the universe created the gods, not the other way around.
Okay.
So Genesis 1 verse 1 already is it throws shade at all the other religions, because it says, no, in the beginning, God created the universe.
Yeah.
And with these other religions, the thing and the God of the thing are not distinct.
Yeah.
The Son and the God of the Son are. So Genesis 1 throws shade again, because it says he stuck lights in the firmament.
So those lights were put there by an all-powerful being.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they're lights. They're not gods.
They're not gods.
Yeah. No, you say that to people who've been the sun god is highly venerated, and then you say no, your sun god is just a lamp.
It's just a lamp. It's just a lamp.
Yeah.
So
and he doesn't say the sun, because he doesn't want to run the risk of making the sun a god.
A god.
Yeah. So Genesis 1 is shady.
Genesis 1 just said God put two great lights.
Yeah. It
one
shade.
to rule the day and the other to rule the night.
And as the Bible story, I mean, we said was that episode 2?
Yeah.
That the Bible is episode 3, I think. It was the Bible is a storyline.
Yeah.
So in the Bible story, this other force emerges, an opposing force to God.
Yeah.
And he's given the name Satan. That's the adversary, or the devil, accuser, I think.
Yes, the accuser. Yeah, it's the accuser.
And he represents evil. And evil has a beginning.
Mm-hmm.
It invades.
Mm-hmm.
And it also has an end in the Bible story.
Yeah.
Never does the Bible say evil will continue forever. It always has an expiry date.
As compared to these other myths, where evil and good will continue to exist into eternity as long as life lasts. So it doesn't put an end to evil. Yeah.
But then, and it doesn't. It's not a war between good and evil. It's a war between a good God and an evil Satan.
Yeah.
So it makes it a personal issue. Their personalities at war.
Yeah.
And today we live in a world where people have turned against that sort of idea.
Yeah.
Said, that's a little primitive.
Yeah. We are living at a time when people have been what's the right word? The dawn of intellect have been illuminated. They reason better. They think better. So we live at a time where people want to reason out things and say, no, this no longer applies. This is old. This is primitive, right? What's right in this day and age is this, because we think better.
Yeah.
So you can't say the devil is a bad guy. Actually, I've heard some narrations say, no, the devil is not a bad guy. The devil just wanted freedom. And he was chucked out of his own home, the home where he had grown up in. And he was chucked out. So he's the good guy. So let's support him. And devil worshippers nowadays do not hide and say, back in the day, you'd say, you're a Satanist. Nowadays, it's celebrated. These are people who are sympathizing with his story.
Or even if they don't believe in his existence per se, they believe in what he stands for.
Because at least he was brave to stand for something. The rest of you were just following following what he did not believe in.
But it's not that sort of idea is not a modern thing. There was a nerd way back. Nerd. He wasn't a Bible nerd.
He wasn't a Bible nerd.
He was not soulful at all.
Okay.
We, as the soulful nerds, deny him. Well, he was a philosopher.
Okay.
He lived in the 2nd century.
Okay.
He followed the ideas of a philosopher named Plato.
Oh, Plato.
And his name was Celsus.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah, and he did not like the Christians. This is what he had to say about the Christians.
Okay.
His book was called On the True Doctrine. It was published perhaps in 175 AD or 177 AD.
Back in the time, people didn't choose to have an accurate record of time, right?
Yeah.
I wish people had recorded things like the year Jesus died.
The day, the hour, the date.
At least they try and mention the time to say it was during the reign of Caesar, what. But they don't mention the year. I wish they had mentioned it. Anyway.
So, he says, their utter stupidity of the Christians can be illustrated in any number of ways, but especially with their misreading of the divine enigmas and their insistence that there exists a being opposed to God, whom they know by the name of devil, in Hebrew, Satanas, for they refer to one and the same being by various names. Okay. Yeah, so he did not like Christians at all.
Okay, so you're saying God and Satan are the same?
No, he's saying we insist on a being opposed to God.
Okay. Okay.
And he calls it stupid.
Okay.
So he even throws shade and says they have many different names for one being.
Yeah.
It's like they're confused.
Okay.
Dumb.
Okay.
And then also again he says, but they, the Christians, show how utterly concocted these ideas are when they go on to say that the highest God in heaven, desiring to do such and such, confer some great gift on man, cannot fulfill his purpose because he is opposed and thwarted by a God who is his opposite. Does this mean that the Son of God can be beaten by a devil? Another quotation from the book, he says, it is blasphemy to say that when the greatest God indeed wishes to confer some benefit upon men, he has a power which is opposed to him and so is unable to do it. Okay. Another quotation, second of last, penultimate quotation from Celsus, says, but the Christian notion that the Son of God accepted the punishments inflicted upon him by a devil is merely ludicrous, especially if we are to think that this is to teach us to endure punishments quietly. In my view, the Son of God has a right to punish the devil. He certainly has no reason to threaten with punishment the men he came to save, the very ones who had suffered so much from the devil's abuse.
These are valid arguments.
Yeah. And so the last quotation says, it is mere impiousness, therefore, to suggest that the things that were done to Jesus were done to God. Certain things are simply as a matter of logic impossible to God, namely those things which violate the consistency of his nature. God cannot do less than what it befits God to do, what it is God's nature to do. Even if the prophets had foretold such things about the Son of God, it would have been necessary to say, according to the axiom I have cited, that the prophets were wrong, rather than to believe that God has suffered and died.
Mm.
So the essence of his argument is this: it's not arguing on the basis of ontology to say no, such a being is impossible. His argument is theological. He says you can't have a supreme God who's held ransom
by
a devil.
By a devil. Yeah. Who the Christians claim to be less superior.
Yeah.
Than a superior being who's God.
Yeah. So the question is really, does Christianity's belief in a devil insult God?
No.
Why not?
Why not? Christianity's belief in a devil, what it simply does, it affirms the existence of evil.
Okay.
But without diminishing the power of God.
Okay.
In the sense that it only puts forward a belief that evil has a source.
Okay.
And that source is the devil. So believing in the existence of a devil helps Christians, or does not insult God, in the sense that it puts it clearly that evil, God is not the source of evil.
Okay.
Evil has a certain source who is not God.
Okay.
Because if you look at other religions, there is a tendency to believe that God is the author of everything, including evil.
Okay.
Right. So our belief as Christians in the existence of a devil simply affirms the fact that evil has an origin, and that origin is not God.
Okay.
So it doesn't insult God in any way.
But doesn't it make your God look weak?
It's fine.
That's what he says.
That's what he says.
By saying that your God then is weak, you can't really talk about omnipotence and and omniscience and everything.
Yeah.
If he has a devil who can actually who not only exists as evil, but can actually thwart his plans.
Yeah. But you cannot prove the power of a being by his ability to demolish his enemies.
Why not? I mean, that's what we want.
Not really.
If our country were invaded, we would want a leader who could defend us.
Right. But these are cosmic issues.
Okay.
With cosmic consequences, and not just cosmic, but eternal consequences.
Okay.
So what God does is he seeks to extinguish evil.
Okay.
By a method
mm-hmm.
that eliminates evil for eternity, rather than using a method that will eliminate evil for now, but then leave room for the occurrence of evil further in the future. I think we discussed this in the previous episode, that if God had immediately demolished the devil, immediately the moment he sinned, all these other angels who had questions were going to say,
something is
going on. Yeah. Now this guy, we have to worship him out of fear, but we cannot trust him from now.
Yeah.
Right. So God uses a method
we will pray with one eye open.
Yes. And with one hand holding the sword while we are praying. So God uses a method that might seem slow, that might seem weak, that might seem this is a useless, powerless method, right?
Okay.
But that method is a method that then ensures that for eternity evil will never exist, because it's a method that exposes the sinfulness of sin.
Okay.
And exposes the goodness of good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've built a good case. You sound like Oregon. Oregon was another. No, he was a Bible nerd.
Okay.
In fact, we know about Celsus because Oregon wrote a book opposing Celsus.
Celsus. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Although he didn't live.
I need to look for that book by Oregon.
He didn't live in Celsus' time. He lived, I think, in the following century.
Okay.
And he was a North African as well.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And he had this early concept of a cosmic conflict.
Okay.
And he affirmed that no, what Kelso says about the Christians' beliefs is true. He has not distorted the beliefs, but he is wrong for disagreeing. And so it's a book he writes to defend what Kelso was attacking. So we can already say that within the early Christian church, there was the concept of Satan, a being who stands in opposition to God.
That's good. Yeah.
Okay. But some say, okay, the Christians said that, but does the Bible say this? And one topic which is picked up is the next section, incitement. It's entitled Incitement. And I'm going to read from the Good News Bible.
Okay.
Enter
Good News Bible.
Good News Bible. Yeah.
We're going to finish all the versions in the world. By the time we finish this podcast.
Yeah.
I can imagine. We haven't quoted the Good News Bible as yet.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
GNB. Yeah. Good News Bible.
So, 2 Samuel 24 verse 1.
Okay.
On another occasion, the Lord was angry with Israel, and he made David bring trouble on them. The Lord said to him, "Go and count the people of Israel and Judah." Okay. That's 2 Samuel, written before the exile. Okay. 1 Chronicles 21 verse 1, written after the exile to Babylon, says, Satan wanted to bring trouble on the people of Israel, so he made David decide to take a census. And under this, now we have troubling questions. Who incited David's census? Was it the Lord or was it Satan?
Okay. Yeah, because here from the verses that you mentioned.
And in essence, we're asking, why is Satan only named in books written after the exile?
Yeah, because the verses that you mentioned, you read, I think I was looking at it here, 2 Samuel chapter 24 verse 1.
Yeah.
And 1 Corinthians chapter 21
First
verse
Chronicles.
1. Yeah. And the Bible here presents two seemingly contradictory accounts.
Yeah.
Of who incited David's census, right? Because 2 Samuel says the Lord was angry with Israel and he made David trouble on them. Right? So it's as if the Lord is causing David to do the census so as to bring trouble upon them. And 1 Corinthians says Satan wanted to bring trouble on the people of Israel and he made David. And it looks like there is a contradiction in Bible issues, but I believe from my perspective these two accounts are mentioning the same thing but from different perspectives. So the reason probably is, number one, there is a different theological perspective in this narrative, that the two books may be reflecting two different theological viewpoints. Maybe the first viewpoint is Samuel might be focusing on God's role in testing the people. Because God is allowing a test to come upon the people for his own specific purposes, of course. But Chronicles then emphasizes a different theological perspective that speaks that for every temptation that comes, there is a devil involved. But for me, the bigger picture is what you mentioned here. To say that the Bible is a progressive story. And revelation evolves over time. Such that the things that were known by people in the first century about God are different from things that were known by people probably in the 18th century about God. Because over time, revelation has evolved. We've learned new things. We've understood new things, right? So it's possible that in this case that we are talking about, the development of the concept of Satan at Samuel's time was not yet there.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't there. But then they learned of the concept of Satan after the exile. That is after the Babylonian exile. Yes. That's when they learned about the concept of
Satan.
Of Satan. So now when the author of Samuel, the Chronicles, because the book of Chronicles is narrating the history of Israel's kings and, stories.
They were after the exile.
Yes, they were written after the exile.
It's more positive in its outlook.
Exactly. So they are now writing from a more enlightened perspective than during Samuel's time. Yeah.
And it's not safe
to
talk about Satan to people who have a weakness for idolatry. Because remember, we said, if you look at the mythologies, the creation stories of the other nations around, there were no really good gods or bad gods. Some gods were good at times and some were bad at times.
Yeah.
So there's no way that people with a weakness for that would say, okay, so we know there's a devil, so we're just going to focus on God.
Mm-hmm.
If you tell them that there's a devil as well, they'll pay more attention to him than to God. So they'll start to worship him as well. Let's make sure if he's that bad,
then let's not mention him.
Let's sacrifice to him so that we stay in his good books.
Yeah.
So instead of scaring people away from the devil, he'd have been an attractive force.
Yeah.
Now, after the exile, they would have to have another series on that one. If you look at the book of Daniel, Daniel meets, he's a good boy. He's a good church boy who grew up in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
But he didn't meet God in Jerusalem. He met God in the land of his captivity.
Yeah.
I try to imagine, God's like a boss at the end of Daniel. He comes in with his hands in his pocket and says, by the way, Daniel, I'm God over here too. Because they believe in territorial gods and whatever. And now you find...
That's why you find this guy, who's this guy? A Jonah. He's told by God to go to Nineveh.
He says, no, I'm going to Tarshish.
I'm going to Tarshish. At least I will go to a place where God is not there.
So
he also, as a prophet of God, believed that God was only found
territories
in his nation.
So
he now runs away from God, goes deep into the sea. So, you wouldn't think that a prophet like Jonah, a man who spoke on behalf of God, would think that God was limited by territory. So it speaks to the concept that we are talking about, that the knowledge of God or the revelation of things evolves with time. So to those guys, it was not necessary for them to know about the devil at the time. It was not yet the time. But now that they experienced God in Babylon, like you're saying, the Daniels and what they have experienced God, they now have a better understanding. Even deeper things, like the book of Daniel would express a lot of deeper things. Post exile, then the concept of Satan is developed.
So there was a time when God took responsibility for things that he wasn't to blame for. I mean, he did it with us. When the earthling and the woman ate the fruit they're not supposed to. They were in a fix. And then God said, no, I'm going to take charge and fix it up. So, so the devil must come in now when there isn't much danger of godly people worshipping him. So,
I think we've talked a lot about the devil and we need to take a break. And probably drink some water. You can't talk about the devil and not break. It's draining, man. I feel tired. Okay. Now we're going to take a break and we'll be back in a few minutes.
Sure. Hello and welcome back to our topic, Ludicrous Notions and the Scandal of the Diabolical. So we're talking about how it wasn't safe at some point for God to talk about Satan because he ran the risk of having his people worship Satan. As would have been normal in that context.
Just like in other religions that were around them.
But when you look at the prophets who wrote around the time of the exile, you begin to see very strong hints at an opposing figure, this opposing figure to God, which begin to come out. Even in the book of Daniel, there's a time when he prays for understanding. And then an angel visits him and says, I would have come, I could have gotten here earlier, but...
Actually, from the moment you started praying, I was told to come to you with an answer.
Putum.
Then I left immediately.
But...
the Prince of Persia.
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah. The Prince of Persia was resisting me, so I was being held.
So was he talking about a human being?
A human being who has the power to withhold Angel Gabriel.
But he's called a prince.
Yeah, that's what's interesting to say. If you think about it, if you think that was a human being that was holding Gabriel, then that human being must have been powerful.
Yeah, yeah.
Because remember at one point...
And he says, Michael had to come and help me.
Yeah. Hey, what kind of human being is that?
But he's called a prince.
A prince.
So he's looking at Daniel, this guy who has this understanding of territorial gods.
Yeah.
And so he's explaining something to Daniel, but using his context to help him understand.
Exactly. Yeah. And remember, Daniel, at this point in time, he was living in the kingdom of Persia.
Yeah.
The Medo-Persian. Medo-Persian kingdom.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And at this time, I think it was Persia. They were
the ascended power. Yeah.
So God is using even Daniel's context to explain a certain concept to Daniel, which he will probably understand.
And also these ancient kingdoms, the God of the nation, God of the kingdom, and the king are almost conflated.
Yes.
The image of God
to
these other people was the king.
Yeah.
Again, where Genesis 1 is radical, because it says the image of God is men and women everywhere.
But to these other religions, the image of God was the king.
Yeah.
Actually, the king was revered as a god.
Yes.
Yeah. So, remember Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar thought he was a god. He was actually respected as a god.
Yeah. So, and even when Daniel explained his dream to him, his first dream, he offered sacrifices to Daniel. Because Daniel was... Yeah, that's not a popular
it's
thing.
Not. Yeah.
People skip over that part, but it's in Daniel too.
Yeah.
And he... because he understood Daniel as the representative of Jehovah.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
So there's this idea that the king and the God of the kingdom are not distinct.
Yeah.
Which brings us to, you talked about the king of Babylon.
Yeah.
And here in Isaiah 14, verse 12 to 17, I'm reading from the Free Bible version. And this is a section that was talking about the Babylonian king.
Okay.
But then the writing gets a little weird. Okay. And it says, Morning star, son of the dawn, how you have fallen from heaven, destroyer of nations, you have been cut down to the ground. You said to yourself, I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the mountain of meeting, the summit of the northern mountain. I will ascend to the high places above the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. But you are dragged down to the grave, into the depths of the pit. Those who see you will stare at you, examining you closely, asking, Is this the man who shook the earth, who made kingdoms tremble? Is this the one who turned the world into a desert, destroyed cities, and never let his prisoners return home? So here are my starstruck questions. Isn't this just a hyperbolic description of an oppressive king? Isn't it just exaggeration?
It could be.
It could be.
Yeah. We can't deny that. But I think the language in itself that is used in that text can clearly shows us that this is not just a king.
Okay.
This is not just hyperbole. And you'll notice that in prophetic language, prophetic language usually in the Bible might have two meanings. The other one is literal and the other one is figurative. And usually it transcends from the literal to the figurative, and you can clearly see the language. And in this case, you can see clearly that this text is not talking about an ordinary human being, but it's talking about some powerful being that has so much power, that has so much capabilities. And when he says, I'll ascend my throne to heaven, this guy, I think there is a counter or an almost similar account that is found in the book of, is it Ezekiel?
Yeah, we'll get to it just now.
Yeah. and you can clearly see that this explanation is not talking about an ordinary human being.
Yeah.
It's talking about someone who's superior, someone who's powerful.
Yeah.
In a way. Yeah.
And somebody said, one Bible nerd said, when the prophet looks into the future, his vision is 2-dimensional.
Exactly.
It's not 3D. He has no depth perception.
Yeah.
So when he sees the future, he sees it through the prism of the present.
Exactly.
You can also see some of that when Jesus spoke to the disciples in Matthew 24. He told them, no, the temple's going to be destroyed. The disciples automatically assume
that is talking about the temple in Jerusalem.
Yes, and at the end of the world.
Yes.
So they ask, when will the end of the world be?
And Jesus responds.
So then he uses the destruction of Jerusalem.
Yes.
To show the end of the world.
Yes, exactly.
So the more Christians study the end of Jerusalem, which they don't do, the better they'll understand the end of the world.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, but when Jesus said it, it was
as if it's one story.
Yeah.
But we need to understand that there is that dual interpretation that we're talking about, whereby prophecy, when it comes, particularly during these times, in Bible times, right? One prophetic manifestation or statement or whatever, any prophetic vision might seem to have been applying at that time. But then it has a dual meaning, which also means to a later time. Like the one that you're talking about, the destruction of Jerusalem, right? It was talking about the literal destruction of Jerusalem and also the end of times, right? So Jesus speaks both, to use one event to illustrate two different events.
Because a good teacher uses the familiar to explain the unfamiliar.
But nowadays we have teachers who use the sophisticated things to try and explain simple things. You find a teacher is complicating simple things so that it can appear learned. But a good teacher starts from the known
and goes to the unknown. So this morning star in Latin, well, the morning star, this is Venus. It's when it's son of the dawn.
Yes.
So in Latin, it means the light bringer, the light bearer.
Yeah.
And the word is Lucifer.
It's Lucifer.
So that's where we get the word Lucifer.
Yeah.
Because it's a translation that went to translation.
Mixing translations and that. Yeah. So,
I'm told in some countries, some European countries, a matchbox is called a Lucifer box. I think it's in the Netherlands.
Oh.
Yeah. So
just because
one person from an English speaking country was in the Netherlands, and somebody said, "Please bring me the Lucifer box." And they thought, "What?
Those guys are devil worshippers."
It was a matchbox.
Yeah, it was a matchbox. I'll call it the Lucifer box from now on.
Yeah, well, your wife may have trouble with that. Your wife may have trouble with that. But okay, so this Lucifer box decides, no, Mina, I can take the throne from God.
Yeah.
So he decides, he becomes an opposing force.
Yes.
But I thought God made everything.
Yes, he did.
Did God make him that way? That's the question.
Did God make him that way?
Yeah.
No.
And that's the next section.
Yeah.
A celestial funeral.
Okay. Celestial funeral.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it says, and I'm reading, it's a long chapter, a long scripture, but
scripture. Okay.
I'll get through with it quite quickly because our time is running.
Yeah.
Ezekiel 28, verse 11 to 19, the Free Bible version, says, another message from the Lord came to me saying, Son of man, sing a funeral song for the king of Tyre and tell him this is what the Lord God says. Once you were complete and perfect, full of wisdom and flawless in beauty. You were there in Eden, God's garden. You wore all kinds of precious stones, carnelian, topaz and amethyst, beryl, onyx and jasper, lapis lazuli, turquoise and emerald. They were placed in gold mountings and settings using skilled craftsmanship, and were made on the day you were created. I gave you the position of guardian cherub, and I anointed you. You lived on God's holy mountain and you walked among stones of fire. You were innocent in everything you did from the day you were created until you were found to be doing evil. You were so busy with all your trading schemes that they destroyed your inside, leading you to sin and filling you with violence. So I sent you away in disgrace from God's mountain, and I removed you from your position as guardian cherub, from your place among stones of fire. You became proud because of your beauty. You ruined your wisdom because you thought you were so wonderful. So I threw you down to the ground, and I made sure kings saw what happened to you. By all your sins and your dishonest trading, you have made your sanctuaries unclean. So I had fire come from inside you, and it burned you up. I turned you into ashes on the ground as everybody there watched. All who know you among the nations are horrified at what happened to you. Disaster has brought you down, and you're finished forever. Why does this sound like a priest in a temple? The stones, carnelian, topaz, amethyst.
Yeah, it's the language that is used here. Yeah. If you notice it evokes not just any priest, but probably
a high priest.
High priest ranking. Yeah.
Top guy.
Yes.
Top dog.
Guy. Yes. And sounds like a priest.
So what was the priest's job? Because when you go back to Leviticus, okay, they were carrying out, there were services in the temple and they led out and stuff. But in Malachi, Malachi reveals something about a priest's job that, I forgot to jot it down.
Okay.
But you can read it later.
Yeah.
And he says, people don't understand me anymore because you priests have not been presenting me correctly.
Yeah.
So the priest's job was to teach people about God.
About God, yeah. Actually, in many passages in the Bible, he says, "Woe to my priests, for they have not taught the people to distinguish between the holy and the common."
Yeah.
So it seems like the duty of the priest was to make known to the people the requirements of God, and not just that, but to represent God properly in showing the people what God desired and what God did not desire.
So you have this being who's been put at the top.
Yeah.
And his job is to represent God.
Yeah.
So God made him good. Not just good, he really elevated him.
Put him at the very top. Promoted
him, gave him everything. He was born promoted.
Exactly. And it's not just a being. Because here the Bible says is the king of Tyre.
Yeah.
Right. But there are things in this passage, Jason, that makes me wonder if really he is an ordinary king.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because when you read, you'll notice that the passage describes this king as perfect and having been in Eden, God's garden. For all we know, this is a description of the condition of beings that existed before sin.
Yeah.
So it can't be talking about an ordinary king after sin. To have been perfect and having been in God's garden,
in the holy mountain.
Right? And it talks about this king of Tyre being adorned with precious stones and all that. Like you were saying, these precious stones are the ones which were usually associated with the priestly garments, right? Yeah. And he's also called a guardian cherub, which shows that this king here is a powerful angelic being who guards God's presence. And lastly, what does it say? I think it's the holy mountain and walking among fire.
Yeah.
Right. It's
that's a priestly job.
That's a priestly job. Yeah. Yes. To because God was the burning fire anyway. Right. So it shows that this being had a closer relationship with the divine realm. He's not just a human being. He's a guy who's at the top and is being put there as one who has to represent God in a way.
He has to teach. But also the king. He's a king.
Yeah.
And if you read Deuteronomy 17, where God describes the kind of king that he should be, he's supposed to run things God's way.
Exactly.
So he's supposed to teach about God. He's supposed to run things God's way. But it says iniquity was found in you.
him.
It's almost passive. It sounds passive, but so it's God didn't put it there,
but it was found.
But it was just it just appeared.
We can't be talking about where it came from or all that because it's a mystery.
Yeah.
But iniquity is found in a guy who's supposed to be teaching God's ways.
And iniquity is more serious than transgression. Because some of the things sometimes when the Bible says sin or transgression, it says it's missing the mark.
Yeah.
But iniquity is deliberate. Yeah. So let's say sin,
that's a naughty smile.
Yeah. Say you're a man. Now what happens sometimes when you're a man is you can have sex with somebody you didn't plan on having it with.
As a man, yeah.
Yeah. You can. I was telling somebody recently that, a man can actually leave the house to go and buy airtime and end up having sex he didn't plan for and come back home without the airtime he left the house for. Usually, I mean, that's bad.
That's bad. But a man can do that.
Yeah, that's missing the mark.
Yeah.
And then there's some guys who leave the house with the express intention of having sex with women they're not supposed to, or even other men. And now that's iniquity.
Yeah.
So when God says iniquity was found in you, it's a serious.
That's blunt.
Yeah. It's deliberate. Thing. Where's the mark so I can miss it?
I can miss it. Exactly. Unlike someone who happens by chance to fall into sin without planning.
Yeah, that's slipping or it's different. It's bad still. Yeah, because I don't want people saying, Jason is saying it's not bad. No, it's bad.
Both of it is bad.
But they're
the level. So
they're levels.
The one that we're talking about here is that this Lucifer guy has been planning this thing for a long time and he's entertained it so long that it's now developing into sin.
Yeah.
So it's now iniquity in him.
And it's inside.
It's inside. It's not yet.
It's not something external.
Exactly.
That was applied.
So for years, he's continuing his duties as the covering cherub. For years, he's continuing to teach, probably. For years, he's continuing to run things, right? But deep down inside him, he's harboring iniquity.
Yeah.
Which is bad.
Yeah.
Which is very bad.
So what we get from this is Satan lived and worked on God's holy mountain, but he was never worthy of worship.
That's the deception that people have. That proximity to divinity does not make them divine. Yeah. Sometimes you think you're a god because you see yourself as being close to God, which is the deception that most prophets in the world have today.
Yeah.
They think that whether the visions that they have, the powers that they have, they think that because they are now on top, they think that they are divine and they let people worship them.
Okay.
Find them being called Papa, Father.
Yeah.
Or some funny names whereby the guy is coming out of a car and people are kneeling and putting carpet for him. They're carrying things. And you're thinking, you're treating a human being like this. It's just a human being. So sometimes we put ourselves in a place where we think we are divine because we are so close to divinity.
Yeah.
Yet there is only one God.
Man.
And we want worship. That's why sometimes even certain husbands want to be worshipped. They think that in their positions as priests of the home, like Lucifer, who was a priest in his place.
Yes.
So they think that because they are priests of the home, they are gods.
Yeah.
Yet you are not a god.
So it's actually possible to spend your whole life at church, at home, preaching and raving and frothing at the mouth against the devil, but actually living according to his principles.
Exactly.
So some people are serving the devil, believing they're serving God.
Exactly. The way they live, the way they do their things.
Yeah.
It's clear that they're serving the devil.
And some of them are the same people who complain to God, like, hey, why did you create it? Why is there, if you're so powerful, why is there a devil?
And that question has been there for years because people are thinking, if God is so powerful, then why does evil exist?
Yeah. And it's not a bad question.
No, it's not.
But I have my answer's always, well, not always, but an answer thought of in recent years is you have some nerve complaining about the devil. If you turn around and be a little devil in your home or in your church and where else. Because if you really are against the devil, then you
shouldn't be.
You wouldn't want to be like him.
According to the principles of the devil.
Yeah.
Sadly, we have many devils in the homes and in the church. Little devils. But I'm not insulting anyone. But your behavior and your attitude and your character shows that you're a little devil. Devil light.
Junior.
Then he is the devil Pro Max.
Ultra.
And you're just the devil light in your house. Yeah. So the way you run your family, the way you run the school, maybe you've just been made a headmaster and you think yourself, I'm the boss here, I do stuff. Even sadly, I'm talking about home and school, but even sadly in churches.
Yes.
And the guy is just an elder and he thinks that he's the god of this church. You know, at some point, I heard a story of a certain guy who was an elder for years, bro. For years. He had been elected as an elder. Then this other year, he was not elected and he thought, I should cause chaos because I'm not elected. I'm the guy here. How can you not elect me as an elder? So when they were reading out the names of the elders for the coming term, says it, or he was seated at the back and the one who was announcing and says, these are the names of our elders. Anyone who has anything to say about this, the guy raises his hand from the back and says, like, isn't it obvious that I'm supposed to be part of that?
No.
Yeah.
Church is not your mother's tuck shop.
Exactly. So we always think that we are gods. Did you say church is not your
mother's tuck shop?
or let's say church is bigger than your mother's kitchen. No, but on a serious note.
I actually said something similar to somebody at church a number of years back. I said to him, the church is not your family's tuck shop. And so everyone laughed, he laughed, I laughed, and we all went into church. He was an elderly man, actually. Yeah. Sometimes it's necessary to tread on toes and kick teeth in.
Yeah. That's powerful. So there is a devil out there.
Yeah. But there's a God. And evil has a beginning, but it has an end. Every time God talks about this guy, he tells him, no, you have an end coming up.
Yes, and that's comforting to know that God is not the author of evil. And that this evil that's ravaging us and destroying us will one day come to an end.
Evil, sin has an expiry date. Goodness, love are forever. Yeah, man, that's a good place to end.
Love.
Yeah, I know. That's a good place to end.
Yeah, that's a good place to end. Thank you so much for joining us in this episode. A little bit shorter than the usual.
Yeah.
But I think it's good.
Yeah.
So
we'll be back with longer ones later.
Next time at 3 hours.
Yeah. So from me, the Soulful Nerd.
And from me, Makawe, the Inspired Content Creator.
Ciao.
See you next time.